This is the Throstle Club with Norman Bartlam and Bob Downing.
Well, hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Throstle Club. It's the programme which looks back on the long and illustrious history of West Bromwich Albion, and we speak to former players and supporters about their memories of our marvellous club, with a particular emphasis on this month in history, which of course is November. Now, alongside me, as always, is the man with an excellent form rate, Bob Downing.
Hello, Norman.
And opposite, Black Country Radio's very own Billy Spakeman and Bob, but in the studio that's been named in his honour.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, I don't think that's it.
Am I right? And named in his honour. He's not even dead
They
yet.
use it as a dartboard most of the time.
Not even dead yet, are you, Billy? No. You're
Maybe
working on it, though.
Yeah,
you're working on it.
I'm working on it.
Right,
So we're in the Billy Spakeman room then?
So we are
Oh,
indeed.
lovely.
Yeah, we're really honoured.
Yeah.
And our special
think so.
guest, who's also just amazed to be here, is a well-known former referee in this part of the world, Herville Hector.
Yeah. An Albury Grammar School lad as well.
Oh,
Yeah, but
Can you sing the school song?
I can, but I don't want to.
No.
come on.
Everybody, needs ceaseless toil and the swirling smoke. Everybody who went to Albury Grammar
So
remembers
hurrah
it.
for the old boys of Albury.
That's it.
All right, I
Yeah.
think we'll end the programme there. Well, we've certainly got plenty to talk about by the looks of it and sounds of it today on this edition of the Throstle Club. Yeah, forget that Albury nonsense. That's the way to sing, isn't it? Come on, that's the Hawthorns choir there from the Brumley Road. Oh dear. Anyway, current situation.
Oh.
Come on. What's your thoughts,
Well,
Bob?
it's not looking good, is it? The performance against
Sheffield Wednesday.
Sheffield Wednesday, that was them. It's so forgettable. Or well, it was forgettable. Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, it's the same that we've seen against Millwall, and the same we've seen against Ipswich. There's a lot of people saying about whether Ryan Mason is up for the job or whether he's the right appointment for the job. I wouldn't criticise. You can criticise him in a way because some of the substitutions are a little bit sort of difficult to understand, especially on Saturday. Now, you bring, as far as and our guests will tell me this, if you want to run down the clock and you're satisfied with what you've got, you bring on a substitute on 89 minutes, just to waste that little bit of time. We send our striker on at 90 minutes. If you're running the clock down, you're giving the wrong message out, that you're satisfied with what you've got, or you want to keep what you've got. It's not going to fall apart on you. But let's look at one thing. Managers now, they're not managers, they're coaches. They do not buy players. That is down to the recruitment team. And I'm afraid the people have got to start looking at the Albion recruitment team, because if they're just going purely on data, it's not working. Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody said to me this week that the best passing accuracy at the Albion at the moment are the two centre halves, simply because they're passing 8 yards forward and 8 yards back. If you're passing to somebody that's just that close to you, your passing's going to be accurate. Yeah. But there's nobody. I mean, I watched it on a Saturday, and you're screaming, get forward, make a running pass, start. There was nobody moving at stages.
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful that we don't blame the players individually too much for that, because they're following the tactics set out by Mr. Mason.
Yeah, all right, yeah, it's his tactics. But I mean, the guy came from Tottenham. I mean, the Tottenham squad from last season and the Albion squad of this season, poles apart.
Yeah, well, it would appear that he wouldn't have had much influence at Tottenham if he wanted to do that kind of thing at Tottenham. There's no way.
No, I mean,
if we come back to the point you made earlier, about putting a substitute on at 90 minutes. We put a substitute on who's been injured. Now, why would we put him on at 90 minutes? If he gets injured, then we've lost him again. And and that's happened before to him at last season at Sunderland, wasn't it? Or was it where he came on a sub and he was subbed again. He got injured. He's been out for that long. He's not getting minutes. And then to put him on at 90 minutes, I just thought was crazy because if somebody clatters into him or I don't know, his hamstring goes again, we've lost him. Now put him on, give him 15, 20 minutes at least. But to put somebody on at 90 minutes, I just don't know why managers do it. I've seen it so many times. Pulis did it a few years ago at Villa. We're winning 1-0. He puts 2 subs on in 90 minutes and we lose the game 2-1. And I can't understand why they do it. Because I know they had time on as well. That's the thing, the referees had time on if you put subs on it that late. But I just can't explain what's going on at the moment up there. And like you say, it's not always the players. It's how the managers deal with them as well, how they put them on, when, and like I just said, when they put them on. But we've just got to look at things at the moment that I think we're just lucky to be where we are in the table, and a couple of wins have put us right back up there. But
but you can't say where those wins are coming from. That's the point. So the bottom line is, what do we do? Do we stick with him, or some people are already calling for him to go?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I think you got to stick with him, and you got to stick with him for a certain amount of time. You've got to give him a chance to try and sort it out. I mean,
but
don't
the
forget,
indication is he's not going to want to change his tactics.
Well, he'll have to.
And if he doesn't change his tactics, he's got to go.
The worst thing, Norman, for any coach or manager is when your team get booed at half time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did Saturday,
And they did on Saturday.
Yeah.
That shows that turning against him.
Yeah, well, he then turned around on Radio WM and said that's part and parcel of the game, managers getting booed. No, it's not.
No.
We're a good, strong, loyal set of supporters at the Hawthorns. We don't do that to managers. Not at this stage in their careers, anyway.
No.
Not so really. He's just come to the club, hasn't he, really? So you'd expect them to be right behind him, which they were at first. We had some good results, at the very start of the season, but now it seems if it's faltering and the fans are getting on his back. But again, I always think that's no good. That's no good to the club if you're going to get on his back like how they do. And I always think booing at half time, I can't understand it, because then if we'd have gone on and won 2-3-0, they're cheering him.
Yeah.
So, exactly. And obviously there's a fine line, isn't there?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's some sad news. Talking of managers, Colin Addison passed away. Bob?
Yeah. Sad news. That was at the weekend. The last time I saw Colin actually was at the Albion, and he was with Graham Williams. It was a few years ago now. But I remember Colin when he came to the Albion as coach or assistant manager to Ron Atkinson the first time. I know he went back again, but the first time, the partnership they had together was absolutely incredible. I remember in the European games that when Albion they played Sporting Braga, they played Valencia, and Colin always went out the weekend before to watch the team who we were playing, and he would have a complete debrief with Ron Atkinson as soon as the team got there. Sometimes you got the impression that he was the good guy, bad guy, good cop, bad cop. Where if Ron had a go at any players, they could go to Colin and he'd sort of sort things out, as well. But I mean, Ron was he wasn't really like that. But I mean, if there was any grievances going on, they knew they could go to Colin. And it's interesting, Albion fans remember him obviously, but what you got to remember that he was player manager at Hereford that famous day when they beat Newcastle, and I've seen a statement from the Hereford chairman, Chris Ammons, that he put out, and saying, they all weren't devastated by the news. And he says, the team he managed and played in put our city on the football map, and without the work he did, it is unlikely Hereford United would have been elected to the Football League at the time. And the nice thing about it is they're looking for the next home match. In the 6th minute, there'll be a round of applause, because that's the number shirt he wore. He was player manager at Hereford. I know sort of Ronnie Radford got all the plaudits, because of that goal and what have you. But the man behind that and the inspiration behind that was Colin Addison.
Marvellous, yep. Man of inspiration, that's what we need at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, November, of course, the season of fireworks, so a few rockets we've already launched in the Albion direction today, haven't we? But it says here on the script, light, fuse and retire. That was my intro to let you sound off, but you sounded off before I got time to say it.
Stand back.
Some bonfire nights in the August, whenever there was matches played that coincided with bonfire night, there were always some cracking headlines, and there's a few examples. See which one you think is best. These are not all Albion. There's some other teams in the Midlands as well. I'm going to mention it here. Grey Rocket boosts Villa. That's a good one, isn't it? When Villa beat Sheffield United, one of Dennis Shaw's match reports. And then it said wet bonfires for Blues and Villa. In other words, a bit of a damp squib. This was back in 1949. Albion in big blaze as Everton go up in flames and Wolves flicker out. How about that for
Hey, blimey. That's good subbing, that is.
Great big headline. You'd have been proud of that, wouldn't you, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, Albion's great guys. They always were great guys, weren't they, when they're done well. But Villa damped down the fireworks. Blues smoulder and no bonfire for Wolves. So you can work out who won and lost on that one, can't you? Albion's great guys was always a good one.
Yeah.
And there's a cracker that says, today's Bacca-rappers and Catherine Wheels. So Bacca-rappers, that's a good old word, isn't it? You don't hear that word now.
I mean, no.
Bit of a Brummy word, I think that was.
Is it?
Yeah. But this was 1927.
Oh, well.
That's long gone out of fashion now. That
I don't know how
that
to
term
speak
has.
properly the Brummie.
Yeah. Then
It's a Brummie trying to be black country, though.
And we got another one here. Villa guys burn 'em up. Sizzling 3 goals in 30 minutes rocks the opposition. I won't say who the opposition is in that one. And then Wolves actually won a game once on bonfire night. And it says whiz bang Wolves as a headline on that one.
Yeah.
Then fireworks galore from the Albion as we thrashed Burnley 4-2 in the Central League. Trewick and Dean, the good guys, was 1 year. So that's good names, Albion names there, John Trewick and stuff. But my favourite one I've left to last. Non-league, Overchurch versus Catherine de Barnes. Have a guess?
Yeah.
So
You know what's coming.
Catherine Wheel.
Alverchurch won 7-1. So it's Catherine Real
Oh.
after fireworks. How about that, huh?
Yeah.
Brilliant, some great headlines.
Think about the headlines as well. If you read the match reports, there was reference to fireworks in the match reports as well.
Yeah, so that's brilliant. So some great headlines there. Headline puns from the Sports Argus connected with Bonfire Night.
This is the Throstle Club with Norman Bartlam and Bob Downing.
Right, the man in the middle then, Herville.
Good morning.
Right, come on then. Tell us a bit about your background then.
Like I say, I grew up in around at Albury, went to Ruden Junior School, in juniors, and then on to Albury Grammar School.
You went there, Bob.
I went to Ruden.
You went to school?
I went to school, yeah. They dragged me there kicking and screaming, but
The home of Charlie Grigg, the great Charlie Grigg.
Indeed, yeah. You got the plaques on the wall, isn't
Plaques
it?
on the wall now, yeah.
Yep. Anyway, we've already interrupted our guest about 6 times so far in your first sentence.
Yeah, so didn't get into football at junior infant school. Teachers didn't pick me for whatever reason. Got to senior school and done very well. And I remember the teacher who was in charge of sports, Mr. Davis, said we got the trials for Whalley schools, and he didn't pick me. He only picked the only guy that went was the right back, Steve Foster. And I said, "Can I go?" And he says, "Go on then. All right, I'll let you go." So went off there, played, and it was at Old Birchie Island, the pitch there, and I scored 2 goals right at the end, and the team I was in won 2-1. And next thing, bang, my name's in the paper. I've got chosen for Whalley schools, so I played alongside Don Penn as one of the players I played alongside, and there's quite a few other decent local players. I went on to play. Only played like local football then for like Galton Youth, St John's, which we were a successful side. When we just left school, we won the league and the 2 cups our first season, and we went on to win a couple of other things after that. And then I played for Galton Youth and also B&JS on Sunday and Windmill. And actually was in the squad that won the Premier Division of the Whalley Sunday League back in 1980. And that was nice to be there. All right, I didn't get that many games that season, but it was just lovely to be around those lads and to be part of it. And I scored the winning goal in one game, so at least I helped them to win the league. Went on from there, and I just thought I weren't getting much out of football. I just felt a bit disillusioned, and you do see games that you have, and you think, I can do better than that referee. And so I decided to take it up. I applied the 1 year, and they didn't come back to me, but then it come out again in the paper the following year. God rest his soul, John Michelle, who was the local guy in charge of the referees, and John got in touch with me, and I took the exam. Back in those days, the exam was 10 weeks, 2 hours a night, one night a week. And on the 9th week, you had a mock exam. 10th week, the exam, you had 20 questions. You had to get 16 right. If you only got 15 right, you failed.
Can we just apologise for Bob exploding in the corner?
Yeah. Carry on, I'll just die in the corner.
And you only had, if you got 15 wrong, you failed, so you had to wait a month before you could take it again. It's changed since then, and referees have got an easier path to get through now. It used to be that they do the same, the 10 weeks, they take the exam again the week before, then do it again. But then what they'd do, when they'd done the paper exam, they'd hand that in, they'd have a face-to-face where they'd ask them questions, and by that time they'd have marked the paper. If they got questions wrong, they'll call them back in, they'd probably ask them those questions, because sometimes it's easier for people to describe something than to write it down. But now it's changed. I mean, I'm one of the referee developers now for the FA, and it's basically some online learning. They obviously have to do a DBS as well, and if they're over 16, but they then come to a 2-hour evening where we go through not all the laws of the game, because they do that on online learning, but we show them different clips of football and what they might come up against, and then they have a full day, which is 9 to 5, and that's classroom and outside as well. So they have to come in the kit, and sometimes they won't play football. They'll play, say, netball, because as referee, you're coming to be a referee, and if you play football, some of them are terrible, and they'll get injured. So rather than get injured, they'll do something like netball, where they're throwing the ball to each other. Somebody taps the ball out the way, and one of them will referee that match, and there'll be 2 on the line as such. But then, as long as they've done that course, as long as they've done the online learning, the evening and the day, then they have to go out. They do 5 games, and then after that, once they've done the 5 games, we call them back. We had one last week. We call them back for another 2-hour session, and we go through stuff and see whether they've done the 5 games, and then they're pointed towards leagues that they can go to in the area they live in, and then they obviously carry on then to go onto those leagues and start refereeing. And we've had some good guys come out of that. I mean, I'd done another thing last year with the FA. Went to Middlesbrough, and it was the under-15 tournament, Premier League under-15 tournament. There's 3 teams from abroad as well that took part in it, and it was some up-and-coming referees, and they refereed all those games and run the line in those games, and they were just giving advice from the guys who were on the side, like myself, and it was an excellent tournament. But I can see some good referees coming through, but in some respects, I do think some of them are rushed to get in the game, which, again, you guys have probably seen up the Alb in some of them. They're not poor referees because they've refereed for a time, but now I think they're rushing some of the guys through, I think, too quickly. And then when they come up against things, you get the crowd on the back, for instance. You get managers on the back. I mean, you see sometimes, we've got to have all watched it, that when it's on TV, the managers are having a go at the 4th official. Well, he's not the man refereeing the game. They're having a go at the assistant on that side of the pitch, and they're giving them stick. That I can't think who it was at West Brom recently, and every time something happened that they thought was wrong, they're up, and they're having a go at the assistant or the 4th official. I was thinking, hang on, it's a nothing foul. To me, it's a nothing foul in the middle of the park, where the bloke's just got to the ball quicker than that guy, and he's just clipped him. put the hand on the ball and play, but they've got to get up and have a go. And there's at least four people who were coming forward from that bench. They were taking it in turns, and you find that, and you'll find that with players, they'll take it in turns to be having to go at the referee because then he won't caution them. The referees who I know who were on the Football League told me that one of the worst players for that, who when something happened, he'd be straight in there, and then he'd go away. So the others would come in who were a bit more angry. That one of them would get cautioned, and that was Gary Lineker, who surprisingly never got booked in his playing career. But that's what they said, that he was one of those that always used to be there straight away having a go at the referee, but then he'd back off and he'd let the captain come in or he'd let one of the other players come in, and they're the ones that get cautioned. But it's part and parcel of football. I mean, I love football. That's why I'm still involved in football. I'm at Tamworth tonight. They're playing Leighton Orient, so I'll be there. I work for the security company that are there, so I'll be there tonight. The FA Cup draws there as well before the game, so that'll be something interesting.
Other times, during the match, you see, where anything happens on the field of play, the players are at the referee, blah, blah, blah. I mean, some have said, Albion are too nice. A decision goes against them, and they sort of accept it without a thing. You get another team who will argue the toss with the referee and say, no, that didn't go on. And, it's difficult, really. Can you be too nice, or can you...
You probably can, but sometimes I'll get the people who sit around me. There's a few of them that know I'm a referee, and they're always asking me questions like Saturday, why's the ball yellow? And I said, it's the 1st of November, they change over to the yellow ball.
I never knew that.
For the winter. Yeah, from November, yeah.
I didn't know that.
and I'll get them asked, but you'll get something, you're probably at a game and a player will get cautioned in the second half, and I'll say, that's the first thing he's done. And I'll say, hang on. You're not on the pitch, so you don't know what that guy's been saying to the referee all through the first half. And he might be saying, look, go away, calm yourself down. And then the second half, the referee's thinking, I've had enough of him. Call him over. Sometimes you'll see him call him over with the captain, they'll have a chat, and if he doesn't listen, next thing he does, he's cautioned. There's been many a time I've sat there and I've said to him, he's going to get cautioned. Next thing he does, he's going to... And I'll say, why? I said, because look at him, you might not be able to hear what he's saying, but you can see he's on at the referee all the time. Malumbi's one of our worst players for getting cautioned at the moment. And I think sometimes you look at it and you think, you're going to get cautioned. Just calm down and play your game. They don't seem to play the game. They seem to worry about what's going on around them. And that sometimes for me, I think it's frustration that why do they do that when they know they're going to get cautioned if they carry on?
I'll tell you something which I just cannot understand why they do it. That's taking the shirt off when they scored a goal.
Yeah, because
they know that's an automatic yellow card.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've had this season, I forget who it was now, scored a goal, took his shirt off, yellow card, red, because he'd had a yellow card before.
Yeah.
And automatically, you're putting your team on the back foot.
Yeah, and they go mad at the referee then saying, common sense. He can't, it's in the laws of the game, and if he doesn't carry out the laws of the game, there's a man in the stand that will mark him down for it.
Yeah. Or
it's on TV, they'll see that, and he won't get any. If he's a young referee trying to get through, he's not going to get any further. He has to carry out the laws of the game. So they've got no choice but to do that. And like you say, the players know that. And when they say, it's all in the excitement of the game, hang on. If they play one of their old teams, they're there, hands down.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, not celebrating.
So if you can do it in that respect, then you can do it when.
That's a good point. Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about shirts. What about that colour clash at the Albion Sheffield Wednesday game?
Well,
why was that allowed? Because they both wore white shorts. They both wore navy blue socks. And from a distance, the colours for the shirts. Obviously, one was striped to the other.
People did complain on Saturday a lot about that, and the shorts they're allowed to. It's basically the shirt and the socks that they should change. You've got to be clear that the shirt's a different colour to the officials and also.
So
to
was
the
that the referee's fault then for not getting them to change?
Possibly, because I think he probably didn't realise that how close it was going to be, and then
white shorts and white shorts.
Well, white shorts, yes, because he obviously has a look at the kit. But I think if you were in the dressing room on Saturday and you probably looked at the kits and thought, right, West Brom blue and white, they're in it was a light purple, wasn't it?
Yeah.
then you'd think that was completely different. But when they came out, when the sun was shining, that's when I thought that people were more aware of what was going on. You couldn't see the that's when you saw the clash. Sort of thing.
It was interesting, we were talking about talking to one of the Albion commercial manager, and we were talking about the away strip and whatever in the various strips, and the amount of research that has to go on for the away strip and the third strip, because they actually take the colours and the design of the shirt for every team they're going to play.
Yeah.
So people who have got a problem with colours, and with their eyesight, they can differentiate between the two. Now, on Saturday, if you'd have had a problem, you'd have had trouble.
Yeah. But you see, with like, and that's why they started giving the referees at that level different colour kits as well. Because you imagine if the referees only had a black kit, then there could be a problem with some of the kits now. And what they say is, like, just on a Sunday morning, if you run a Sunday morning team from a certain pub and that guy's gonna sponsor you, if he gives you a black kit, you're going to wear it because it's got the pub name on it. So, but the referees on a Sunday morning, especially in Birmingham County FA, don't allow the referees to wear anything apart from black. So if you go on the Parks pitch, they should be wearing black. I mean, we've gone to the Villa and done games that they might give you a bib to put on. To be honest.
well, so you'd be good at dribbling if in that case. Well, we'll talk a bit more if we get time towards the end of the programme, but something a bit different now. So 1985, 1986 seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? And well, that's because it is, I suppose, really. But some of us have got really bad memories of that period in time. And someone who's just brought a book out all about that particular season is Chris Lepkowski, who many people will know from his work at West Bromwich Albion and also on the Sports Argus Birmingham Evening Mail group over the years. And the book's called The Slum Sport, which is an intriguing title. And Bob, you were with us when we met up in the pub the other day to have a good talk with him about it.
Yeah, he was very good. There's a lot of books on the market at the moment, and they all seem to be nostalgia, and that's what people are looking for now. Instead of the sort of run of the mill, I played for Manchester United and I scored a goal here and I scored a goal there. When you start looking back at various things, it triggers back your memory and you start remembering things, as Chris's book does. That it's just the one season. I mean, some books go back even, sort of do a complete, sort of a decade. But it's an interesting book. It's an intriguing book as well.
Yeah, well, this is what we had to say when we had our great discussion in the King Edward's pub by Halesowen Town Football Club. Jingle there reminds you, of course, that you're listening to the Throstle Club, and much of the programme today is coming from the King Edward's pub in Halesowen, where Bob and myself are joined by Chris, who's just brought out a smashing book called The Slum Sport. So, Chris, the obvious question is, why is it called The Slum Sport, and what's it all about?
Well, this is the reason it's called The Slum Sport is that this book is about the 1985-86 football season. And the slum sport was a derogatory term coined by the Sunday Times in an editorial around sometime in May 1985. Incredibly, it was just before Heysel, so I can only imagine what they said after the Heysel disaster, when, of course, hooliganism reared its ugly head. But it was a reflection, really, of where football was. Football wasn't the sport it is now. It wasn't a socially acceptable pastime to be involved with, or you didn't. Being a football fan wasn't something that you bragged about or boasted about. It was something that actually you shied away from because it was in such a dark place at the time. Football hooliganism was rife. Clubs were losing money. Attendances were down. TV and football couldn't agree a deal to show football matches. Think of it now that in the opening half of 1985-86 there was no football on TV because the two entities couldn't agree a deal. And it was really during this season that the embryos, if you like, of the Premier League were planted by people like Irving Scholar of Tottenham, David Dean of Arsenal, Martin Edwards of Manchester United, Philip Carter of Everton, who felt that never again will football find itself in this dark place again, and they started the ball rolling for what would eventually become the Premier League. But really, my investment in this project was because I was 9 years old, and it was the first proper season that I engaged in as a football fan.
And it's also not something that lots of people have perhaps written about at length because it was such a bad season, really, I suppose. Is that right?
That's my journalistic part of rubbernecking, I suppose. You know, I always say that we all like to rubberneck that bad news sells, and actually the bad news came during 84-85 with Bradford. The Bradford disaster, the St Andrews tragedy where a fan lost his lives, riots at Luton versus Millwall, and of course the Heysel disaster, and a little known game between Leicester and Burton that ended in that needed to be replayed because of hooliganism in the FA Cup. And if that was the winter of football, I wanted to write about the spring. I wanted to write about better times, and football emerged in a better place during 1985-86. It was probably the most exciting title dice for many years. 3 clubs could have won the league in the final weekend of the season, and it was just a great season in so many respects. I say that as a West Brom fan because actually it was an absolutely disastrous season from our point of view, but from a footballing point of view, it was an interesting story that, and like you say, Norman, it's a story that hadn't really been told before.
What I find fascinating is that looking back on it and through the book is some of the things that fans actually put up with. There was Ken Bates, for instance, wanted to put in electric fencing.
Yeah. There was Ken Bates and his electric fence. David Evans, who was chairman of Luton, Luton were the club that were the focus of hooliganism when Millwall came in the FA Cup in '85, and they'd made that game pay on the night. So they did a full 360-degree turn, or 180-degree turn, and decided that actually what they needed to do was to ban away fans, and they really petitioned hard and lobbied hard for ID cards. Now, David Evans, the chairman of Luton, was an MP, a Tory MP. He was a close confidant of Margaret Thatcher. And of course, what we really had was a government led by Margaret Thatcher who had no interest whatsoever in football. They hated it, and much like she had a derision for working class people and working class communities across Liverpool, across the Midlands, across other industrial heartlands, it was her view that football was an inconvenience that she was quite happy to stamp out and do all she could to keep it off her political radar. And the fact that it was football and hooliganism was rife at the time was of a huge embarrassment to her, but in many respects probably a product of what maybe she had created at that time.
Exactly. That's what lots of people will say, isn't it? Yeah. An interesting thing in the book is that Ted Croker from the FA is one of the few big cheeses, if you like, was never knighted, got the knighthood after he retired, possibly because he was against lots of the things that Thatcher was saying.
Well, there was a famous meeting after Heysel where Thatcher did a few things. She firstly brought in all of the journalists who had been, or several of the journalists who had been at Heysel, people like Brian Glanville, I think Peter Jones was there, and she asked them, you know, what's going on? What caused this? And she was alarmed to be told that actually it was her policies, her destruction of the working class community that had caused this. And Ted Croker was very much on board with that. He said that when Thatcher described hooliganism as football's hooliganism, he said, well, actually, it's your hooliganism. You own this. This is down to the culture that you have created. And of course, it was Thatcher who famously said there is no society. And Ted Croker was very much of the mind that the response to where the country was at the time was hooliganism was part of that.
Exactly, yeah. Right, so you've got lots of other things in the book. You interview lots of stars as well. Albion, we'll come to the Albion bit in a minute, but you've got people like Jim Rosenthal, who was a big cheese on the TV at the time, although, as you say, there was no coverage at the start of the season, was there? But Jim was quite influential on what was happening in steering TV at that time, wasn't he?
He was. Jim Rosenthal was really good, actually, because he was a TV broadcaster at the time, and there was no, most of the stuff he was working on was athletics. He was working on boxing. There was no appetite for football. At the time, snooker was getting 25 million viewers for that famous final between Dennis Taylor and Steve Davis, and Jim Rosenthal was getting work where he could, and he actually said that football wasn't part of his staple at the time, but famously or infamously he did cover the awful match between Scotland and Wales when at Ninian Park when Jock Stein sadly passed away. So Jim Rosenthal was a big voice back then. He was part of the industry that was struggling, if you like, to agree a deal with football. He wasn't one of the people involved in that, but he was very much the face of football. People like him, people like Jimmy Hill, and Martin Tyler, who I also spoke to, who was a preeminent commentator even back then. They spoke about the way people just didn't care for football. There was no appetite by the ITV or BBC to showcase football, and you have to remember that by this point ITV and BBC, there's no Sky back then. ITV and BBC have basically running a cartel and telling football, we're going to pay you this. If you don't like it, well, up to you, but that's all we're paying. A far cry from where we would end up in 1992, where Sky Sports are investing, I think, was it 600 million in that first rights deal, and we look at it now, we're talking billions rather than millions, and yet at this point football and TV can't agree a deal at all.
There's a famous story in the book, I think, with Frank McAvenny was on a bridge in London, and Martin Tyler took him there, and he was a big star at West Ham at the time, and he asked people, didn't he, in the street, who am I with? And very few people knew him.
That's right. I mean, Frank McAvenny came down from St Mirren. The very notion that a Premier League club would now sign a player from St Mirren seems a bit unusual, But he was a prolific goal scorer north of the border. He came down and he hit it off straight away, and he had an outstanding season. And you're quite right that Saint and Greavesy started in October 1985, and one of the first, because of course there was no football for them to show, they couldn't show any football, so they were doing features on players. And one of the things they did, Martin Tyler took Frank McAvenny out onto the streets of London, and the only person who recognised him was a London taxi driver. We all know London taxi drivers know everything, so that was no surprise. But the only other person who recognised him was a passing Billy Connolly, who bumped into them as they were recording the piece and actually engineered to get Frank McAvenny onto Wogan, which completely changed his whole trajectory and his whole profile, because at this point Frank McAvenny is a guy who's scoring lots of goals for West Ham. He's enjoying the lifestyle of being a good-looking footballer in London, shall we say, and nobody knows who he is and what he looks like unless you're actually going to football matches, because there were no matches screened at this point.
Yeah. You've got a nice interview with Tony Mowbray as one of you, because at that time that was the demise of Middlesbrough. They were really on a downer, weren't they, at that time?
Yeah, Middlesbrough were effectively shut down. They ran into so much debt, poor management, and the 1985-86 season ends with them relegated from Division 2, and the padlocks are effectively brought in, and the Ayresome Park is padlocked up. And Middlesbrough, Tyne-Tees TV announced that they're no longer. They are effectively having to train on park pitches. The players have to wash their own kits. There are no company cars. The players have to travel in with the cars they own, or in Tony's case, travelling on the bus. And they have to look for training pitches every day. And they end up starting the next season playing at Hartlepool. So if Hartlepool play at 3 p.m, Middlesbrough then kick off after that game has finished. And actually, it was a guy called Steve Gibson who came in, brought together some investors who rescued Middlesbrough on the very last day of the league deadline. And make no bones about it, the Football League were ready to act and shut them down. That this wasn't an era where Football League was trying to help football clubs. Clubs ran into trouble, the Football League were happy to shut them down. And Tony Mowbray was captain of that team, and he spoke very eloquently about that time there, the pressures and the way that the community really went from rallying against this struggling team to embracing them. And Middlesbrough would go on to have people like Alan Boksic, Ravanelli, Giannino playing for them. Yeah. But actually this team is so fondly thought of because not only did they survive closure, just about, like I say, Tyne TV actually announced the closure of Middlesbrough, but within 2 years they got relegated twice and would be back in the top flight playing the big clubs. And Tony Mowbray, Gary Pallister, Stuart Ripley, the big lad up front, what's his name, Bernie Slaven, were part of this revolution led by Bruce Rioch. And that's a Middlesbrough team that people of Teesside look back on with great fondness because they were their people. They were their local people who came and did something magical to bring the town's football club back to life.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say about Middlesbrough playing the Hartlepool, because I've just done a section for my Sports Argus book about ground sharing in the 70s and 80s, and of course 85-86 there was, I think you describe it in the book as the nuclear option, but perhaps Villa, Blues and Albion all sharing the same ground.
Yeah. I couldn't believe this when I was doing my research, and as an author you'll know this, Norman, you go through all the newspaper archives, and I was 9 years old in 1985 at this point, so I had no concept of this, and I went back and could not believe that Albion's chairman at the time, Sid Lucas, was seriously considering ground sharing, and he felt that it was a proposal that needed to be explored with Aston Villa, Birmingham and presumably Wolves, although Wolves aren't mentioned in the pieces that I read. Now, to give you an understanding of where football was at this point, Aston Villa were averaging about 16,000. West Brom were averaging about 14,000. Birmingham were averaging 11,000. These are top division clubs. These aren't Villa in the third division or Albion in the third division. These were clubs playing at the very pinnacle of English football, and that's how few people were going to games. So Sid Lucas, the West Brom chairman of the time, actually drew inspiration from Charlton Athletic, who were ground sharing at this point with Crystal Palace, and he said, well, if they can do it in London, maybe we need to consider this. And there's a quote from an Albion supporters club representative who, I don't know the guy, but I suspect that he had to kind of make this comment with a bit of a gun to his head in many ways, because he said, well, we might have to do this. You can't imagine a football fan now, in the tribal world that we live in, or even back then, but even now especially so, saying, well, yeah, maybe we should consider ground sharing with Wolves or Villa. It just would not ever come onto the radar, let alone come onto the agenda. And yet it was that close in 1985-86 that it was a discussion point. And at the same time, Birmingham were taken over by Ken Weldon, who was winding down his interest in Warsaw. And yet there was also a serious proposal about Warsaw moving out of what was then the Fellows Park, their former stadium, moving to St Andrews, taking ownership of St Andrews and leasing the stadium back to Birmingham, so that Birmingham would be tenants at St Andrews and Warsaw would be the owners of St Andrews, and both would play there. And to anyone listening to this who supports either of those clubs, that must be the most mind-blowingly stupid idea that you could imagine. And yet, it was close to. It was certainly being discussed about.
There was another situation as well where when Sandwell Mail first came into being, I was on the Express and Star, and obviously when you have a new newspaper starting in a certain area, in a particular area, you want to see what they've got. So I think some of our lads were on the doorsteps of the news agents when the first one came in, and I was at the Black Lake office in West Bromwich, and the editor slammed the first Sandwell Mail down on the back page, saying about Walsall ground sharing with Albion. And I thought,
he wanted to know why you hadn't got the story.
Yeah, wanted to know why I hadn't got the story. So the person who was quoted extensively in it was Gordon Dimbleby, who was the commercial manager. So I got on the phone straight away and said, Gordon, what's all this about? And he hadn't seen the paper then. But I think he was as gobsmacked as I was. I think it had been probably misinterpreted, or as a journalist would do, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And he'd said, sort of that could be considered. He never said it was going to happen. Yeah. But this was at the same time that the mayor of West Bromwich, I forget who his name was now, he wanted Albion to change the name. He wanted them to become Sandwell Albion.
Didn't they? Yeah.
And drop the name West Bromwich. And Tom Silk said, it'll always be West Bromwich Albion. It'll never be anything else. And that was the... But I mean, this idea of ground sharing, at the time, was... Everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
Everybody was thinking about it. Because the finances, the thing are here.
And it had also worked in Italy. A lot of Italian clubs went down that route. Ironically, they're now stepping away from that, because clubs want to have their own identity, their own patch, if you like, to play on. But it was just a bonkers idea, really, that I couldn't believe the traction it had and the coverage it got. It seems like pie in the sky. And it seems like these days we dismiss it as a rumour, but make no mistake, when you've got the Albion... Gordon Dimbleby was commercial manager at West Brom. Sid Lucas was the chairman. They are having serious discussions about this.
Amazing. Now, 85, 86, we say not much TV coverage at the start anyway. That was good news for the Albion, really, because it was a disastrous season, wasn't it?
It was terrible. I remember where I was on the day of the first weekend. I was at my uncle's in Leamington, and I rushed back in. Everyone was sat outside. It was a glorious day, and I rushed back into the house because we were in the garden to put the football results on, and Albion drew with Oxford, and I thought, well, okay, that's fine, it's not a bad result, at least we haven't lost, we'll get something in the next few games. We lost the next 9, and it culminated in John Giles quitting, and I've actually interviewed John Giles about this in the past on the podcast that I do elsewhere, and I think it's fair to say Bob will probably have a greater insight than me on this, but Giles did say that he really struggled with player power, the growth of player power, the influence, the growing influence of agents interfering. And if there's one thing that John Giles did not like and always rallied against, it was interference. And it was clear that even at 44, which he was at the time, I think, he was 44, 45, it was clear that he'd come back to a football scene that was completely different to the one that he'd left in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted, when he left the first time, I think it was mainly because he wanted to sign the players he wanted, and sort of and to pay the fee that the other clubs wanted, and the Albion was sort of a bit against, well, not a bit against it, a lot against it, and that it was the time when the directors were saying, we decide if we're going for them, not you, and that's what really got his goat, because he knew players that he wanted to bring in that would improve the side, but they were going to cost money. But Albion had got sort of a budget and then they were going to stick to that budget, and when he went to Vancouver Whitecaps, it was Vancouver Whitecaps, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Yeah. When he went to Vancouver Whitecaps, basically, he could get players he wanted.
Yeah, just ignore that ambulance going by outside on the on.
That'll be Albion's 1985-86 season going there.
Could be going down the drain. Yeah, just to finish off then, Chris, your book's brilliantly got forward by Barry Davis, the great Barry Davis. How did that come about?
I'll be honest, I probably would have had Jim Rosenthal had he not been so brilliant with his interview. And I just tried. I got in touch with somebody. I said, "Do you know Barry Davis?" And they said, "Yeah, I'll give you his number, email." I emailed him with my phone number, and 2 minutes later, I had a phone call from an unnamed, unknown number, and it was Barry Davis. And I called him Mr. Davis throughout. He ended up saying, "Look, will you call me Barry for goodness sake?" And I called him a couple of weeks ago. Oddly, I messaged him. I said, "Could you send me your address, please? I'd like to send you a copy." And he called me. It was his birthday. I think he was about 89, 88. Wow. Called me on his birthday, and he was just heading out to the new stand at Fulham for his birthday dinner. And I mean, he was fantastic. He was the voice of my childhood. So to get Barry Davis on board was just an honour. It's not often that, and Bob will no doubt back this up, it's not often in our job that you get starstruck, but there are one or two people occasionally who make you sort of go, wow, you know.
Yeah, this is Barry. I said, Leeds will go mad. And I never like to go mad.
Just look at his face.
Brilliant. Look at his face. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So that's superb. Absolutely brilliant. So the book then, the Slum Sports, Stuart Curtis Sports is producing it. Yeah,
the people who do so many of the brilliant programmes that we see.
That's football programmes.
Yeah, and have done other books as well. So you can buy the book from Curtis Sport. The quickest way to find it is to type in the Slum Sport into your search engine of choice. I always recommend Google, and that will take you straight to the links. And if you go onto the Curtis Sport website and put into the books option, you will find the book there as well.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
Bob.
Nice to see him again.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So, hope the book goes well. I've read 3/4 of it. I must say, made a few notes on it. I've learnt a few things as well. A few things are used Miss Sports Argus book as well, I think, actually, to be honest. But that's what research is all about, isn't it?
Absolutely,
seeing what other folks are doing. Hope the book goes really well. And thanks for joining us, Chris.
My pleasure, thank you. Good
nice
to see you both
again, Chris.
You too, Bob. You too.
You too, musical end to
yes.
it. Musical end to it. Now, talking of the Argus, Hector, as a referee, you were in the Argus a few times, weren't you? There's a great headline here. Ref gets United's goat. Come on, defend yourself.
Yeah, and you always get this, I think, as a referee. You're not going to get on with every single team. And no matter what I did for that team, it was Newell United I think they're from Derbyshire, if I'm right. And I had them a few times and just never got on with them. And the one particular game, they wouldn't listen. Whatever I was trying to say to them, they just wouldn't listen. So if you get ever thrown against them, they were complaining, and they really had a go at me. And I ended up sending a couple of them off. Okay, and I always used to give. I'd say when you, as a referee, you ask, you tell, and then you have to take action. If they won't listen to you, you have to do something, because if you don't, you'll see that player be running around, he'll be flying into tackles, and you then have to take drastic action, and it could bring other people in. But they just wouldn't listen to me, and they were having a right go. And the big story was in the Argus, but then luckily the following week, the away side, or the home side as they were at the time, I think, GPT Coventry, they put a story in the Argus saying, "Hang on, Mr. Hector done everything right. We had players cautioned."
Yeah, said in the Argus, Mr. Hector made it clear from the start that he was not going to have players having a go at him. Newhall didn't take heed of that and had 7 players booked for mouthing at him. There was nothing wrong with him at all.
And that's good. That is good when you get a team come out in support of you. Another game I had was the quarter-final of the big cup in the Midland Com, and it was at Shifnal, and there was over 1,000 people there, Shifnal used to get a good crowd, because it's out in the sticks, isn't it? And they used to get a good crowd every week. Well, we had, they played Kings Norton ex-servicemen, and as we pulled up on the car park, getting our bags out, the coach pulled up with them, and I could see him, and I was thinking, oh no, we've got that ref today.
Here he comes.
But I said to the lads, look, just do our job, and that's it. After 20 minutes, I'd sent 2 of them off, and one of them was swearing. One of them swore blatantly at the assistant. He'd given an offside, and he shouted across the pitch. Well, all the fans heard it. We had no option but to send him off. His language was disgusting. The captain, he'd been cautioned for a bad foul. Give another push against him, and he said, "What was that for?" I said, "Push." He swore at me and said, "You're the worst referee in the league." So I had to send him off. He's gone. As he's walking off, he's gone down the side of the pitch. One of the fans said to him, "What's the referee sent you off for?" He said this, and he punched the fan. Now, we didn't see this. We didn't see this. It was a lad who'd come with us. He'd just passed his referee's exam that week. He came with us to watch the game, and he come in half-time. He said he punched one of the fans. I got the secretary. I said, "Listen, call the police. He's got 45 minutes before he gets on that coach. They should be here by that." They never called them. And, of course, we had the end of the game, the centre-forward for Shifnal. It was 9-0. The centre-forward for Shifnal was going through again, and the brother of the kid who'd been sent off kicked him again, and made sure he went down. They kicked him when he was on the floor, and I ended up sending 2 off then. So it just escalated, and one of the assistants was Darren Mansell, who was a thalidomide, and he'd got small arms, and we had to lift him up and carry him because he couldn't get through the crowd. It was that bad. They were all waiting for us.
Blimey.
But that's football.
Yeah, some great. I was going to say great stories.
No.
They're all great, but certainly interesting stories. Briefly, you were friends with Uriah Rennie, weren't you?
Yes, coming through my early refereeing career, Uriah was somebody that I obviously looked up to, and I got to meet him and got to know him quite well when I stayed at his house a few times, and it was just sad to see that he passed away early this year. And I actually attended the funeral with a few of the local guys, Andre Marin and Trevor Parks. But it was good to go and to celebrate his life.
Brilliant. Now, I'm sure we could talk lots more, but once again, time has beaten us. Gone quick.
It has gone quick.
Bob. So all it remains to say is thank you very much for joining us,
Yes.
and hope you listeners have enjoyed the programme.
Live from the Black Country, online, on your mobile,